Anne-Marie, very nice to see you. Folks, it is a pleasure to have everybody here. Thank you so much for coming. Where's Gabi? We got to pin Gabi to the top here. We're going to have an amazing time today. Folks are continuing to trickle in, so we're going to let them for a moment. But let me welcome everybody. Guys, huge thank you for coming. Just to make sure everyone's in the right place. I know it's some people's first Riveter event. Welcome. You're at a Riveter event. These are job seeker events like you haven't gone to before. We get pretty raw, we get pretty deep, but most importantly, we focus on a lot more than just the traditional stuff you're finding on blogs. We talk a lot about rejection. We talk a lot about wellness. We talk a lot about health. We talk a lot about goals. We talk a lot about community. We talk a lot about a lot of things you might not find other places. So thank you everybody who's been to events before. Thank you everybody who's at their first events. We're gonna have an amazing time. So here's what's gonna happen. I just posted a link into the chat. This link is a very important link. I want you all to click it, and I want you all to put your LinkedIn messages, your LinkedIn profiles into the box you see there. It takes you back to the Riveter event. You need to be signed into Riveter to see it, and you might want to scroll down about halfway on the page, and you'll see a box that asks you for your LinkedIn information. Put that in there and you'll be able to see all the other attendees, connect with them much easier. It's a whole lot easier than just going through everybody's LinkedIn one at a time in the chat during the entire process. Michael, this new feature loves you. Thank you very much. So check that out. I'll post that again a little bit later on in case you didn't have the time. Remember, make sure you're signed in, make sure you have a full Riveter account. It's totally free to join if you haven't yet, and make sure to connect with each other because we don't need to beat down a dead horse because everyone knows networking is the way you're going to get that next job. So let's start here today. So today we're here to talk about interviews. I talk to a lot of you guys very often. Interviews are the things we get excited for, the things we're working for, and the things that oftentimes a lot of pain and rejection comes out of afterwards when things go wrong. A lot of regret might come out of it. Oh, I should have done this differently. I wish I could have. But we're going to focus on what we can prepare, how we can prepare better for interviews, how we can do better during an interview, and then how to handle after the interview. After we do that, we're going to break up into some mock interviews. And here's how those mock interviews are going to work. We're going to break up into breakout rooms of groups of 4. You guys are going to be random. There's people who are sellers here. There's marketers, there's engineers, there's designers, there's pretty much everybody you might imagine from different industries. I want you to all think through in the next 25, 30 minutes, think about 2 interview questions that you've been asked. 2 interview questions that you've been asked because you are going to ask one of the other people here those 2 interview questions. And I'll explain more about that once we get to the 30 mark. But that's what I want you to start. Just make a quick note. What are 2 questions that you've been asked? They could certainly be as simple as tell me about yourself. They could be a little bit more detailed, and we're going to help each other practice and get better. Now, with that note, I want to introduce our speaker and guest today, my good friend, Gabi Preston-Phypers. Welcome to Riveter's Time Well Spent. Gabi, we're going to start with a very blatant interview question. Tell me about yourself. Why do we have you here?
Oh my goodness. Okay, right. I'm going to make this a super speedy introduction because I'm going to get into some really interesting questions, okay? Apart from me, obviously, because that's a super interesting question. So my background is I studied business and economics at university and spent 8 years in banking for my sins. I worked at Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan, working from back office all the way to front office. Absolute incredible experience. Decided after about 8 years, I just had enough. I was like, I've done my time here. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go and take on a new adventure. Very Gabi, right? I just want to take on something new and push myself out there in the world. And I jumped and moved into software sales. Completely random, completely different. I'll be honest, I did it for about 6 months and sat there and went, oh my goodness, this is not the job for me, right? So I've done it, guys. If any of you've made that jump before and gone, oh my God, what am I doing here? Did it, learn from it, and actually embrace the experience. And then fast forward, went off on maternity leave and had a little girl, yay, who's 2, tick, mummy surviving 2 years, well done me. And then joined the family business doing recruitment. So we're part of Oscar Harrington now. I'm now the acting CEO of the company, work with my husband, poor sod, bless his heart. we focus on robotics. And then during that process, I have also launched a coaching business because I saw that actually there was so many people out there that just needed a little bit of guidance from someone like myself who've actually done it, right? I've been through the transition of going for those major corporate roles. I then joined a startup. I pivoted my role. So I was like, actually, I can share this with you guys. So started Own It with Gabi, which has been amazing and so much fun. That only launched a couple of months ago. I'm about to launch a software company as well, because I clearly don't have enough things to do in my life. So super, super busy. So that's kind of Gabi in the quickest nutshell humanly possible. There you go.
I knew we were going to get jazz hands. I was wondering how many minutes into the show we get our first Gabi jazz hands.
Seven.
Well, 7 minutes. 7 minutes. Sounds about right. Folks, as you guys have questions, post them in the chat or send them to me directly, and we're going to make sure this is interactive. But Gabi, I want to start with this. There's certainly all the interview tips in the world, especially from people who are as extroverted, as strong communicators, and as professional as you are in this. But each and every one of us has had our worst interview ever. Tell me about your worst interview ever. What went wrong? What did you learn?
Do you know what? My worst interview ever was for a graduate role. And weirdly enough, I got the job and I have no idea how I got this job. And I went into this interview, I knew everything about the company, like I'd done all my prep. But the one question I hadn't prepared for was, who's your greatest role model? Like, who do you look up to? And it was one of those moments where my mind went blank. And blank was just pure panic, utter panic. I think I was like, what must have been 19 at the time. Didn't know what to say. And like, I was scrolling through my head, you know, when your head's spinning and you're thinking of all these names, you're like, do I say my dad? Is that too cheesy? Like, do I say Jamie Dimon because he's the CEO of the company? But sadly, the response that came out of my mouth was based on a reality TV program I'd watched the night before. And this particular name that came to mind was Katie Price. So anyone who doesn't know Katie Price, or Jordan, should we say, I'm seeing some giggles down here, so someone recognized the name, is an ex-Page 3 model, okay? Literally, I said the name, it was too late, it'd come out of my mouth and I couldn't take it back. So I was like, I just have to own this situation. And I very calmly, as this guy kind of just looked at me like I was crazy and I'd applied for the wrong job, just calmly responded with, she's a great role model in terms of her ability to move and pivot her career and her life, and she owns her experiences and she's trying to show people they can keep moving forward with everything. Sounds like there's a plane. It's definitely not mine. Don't know where that's coming from. And I literally just really calmly just owned the conversation. But oh my goodness, I walked out, and as I finished the interview, this guy just looked at me and went, Katie Price, really? Of all the inspirational people in the world, you could have said Katie Price was your option. I just smiled. I was like, that is it. But it was so mortifying at the time. And I just remember coming home and telling my dad, and him being like, really, Gabi? Really? You think they're going to give you a job in banking as a serious grown-up with that response? They did. A week later, I got an offer, but I was, oh my God, I was so mortified with my response.
So, you know, I think that's, by the way, can you clarify, Page 3 model also means?
Topless model.
Great. That's what I wanted to
Yeah, there we go, guys. I said it out loud.
That's the role model. So what I wanted to ask about that is, all of us have had that experience. We do all the preparation in the world. We know our answers. What's your strength? What's your weakness? Yep. If you were at a bar, what kind of drink would you be? We can answer all of these. But there's always a question that we didn't expect, that we just throws us off. How do people prepare? How should people prepare for interviews? And what do people do when their preparation doesn't meet reality, when they get a question they didn't expect?
I think let's if we deal with the prepare piece first, right? So in terms of preparing for an interview, it can be really overwhelming, right? You can feel so much pressure that you need to know the answer to everything in the world. Let's be honest, you don't. You're sitting in front of another human being. And I want you guys to remember that. Every time you walk into an interview, you're sitting in front of another human being. They're not going to expect you to know everything. But what they are going to expect from you when you walk into this interview, to know the job, right? I've had lots of people walk into a job description and they've applied to so many, or to a job interview. They've applied to so many different jobs. They can't quite remember the job interview and the job description that matches the company. That's awkward. So know the job. But then also know why you think you'd be good at that job, right? Like, just have conviction, go through the job description and understand for each of the point they've raised. So even if it's a description on the company culture, what about you would make you a good fit for their culture? If it's specific skill sets they're looking for, then again, what skills are you bringing to the table that address the need they have? And if you don't have exactly the skill they're requiring, talk about something that's relatable to that situation. So obviously some of you may be pivoting in your careers, and I hate the word pivoting, but unfortunately it's the word of the moment, right? And you're looking to move. You don't have to have direct experience all the time. Sometimes you just need to be able to articulate and help them understand how the world you came from is actually super powerful for them to have you on board, because it's all about coming with a different perspective to their business. So do that prep. I mean, you can do your basic bits, right? You've all probably read it. Like, understand the culture, understand the company, right? A big one in terms of interview prep is understand the competitors, right? This is one so many people miss. If you can understand the competitors, what ends up happening during your interview is you can start asking questions. And this is called not waiting till the end, by the way. If you understand the competitors, you can lay in questions about those competitors, going, oh, your competitor does this. Oh, okay, is that like, how does that relate with what you're doing and what you're asking me to do? All of a sudden, you're starting to show these companies that you really get what they're up to and you get how they're playing in the field. Super, super easy. And you can even do some basic things. Come on, we're talking about preparing for your interview. If you're doing a virtual one like this, make sure your tech works. Make sure your microphones work. Make sure your camera works. Make sure you minimize noise as much as you possibly can, right? We all get it. I've got a 2-year-old. She comes running in here screaming. I mean, she won't. It's 9 o'clock at night, my side. So if she wakes up now, I'm ruined. But just make it as quiet and as calm as you can be, because it means you can be completely focused, okay? And I mean, what clothing, right? I know this has been mentioned before in a recent post on LinkedIn about not dressing appropriately for interviews. Check out the culture. And if you can't find the answers to your questions online, ask an adult, right? Ask a grown-up, ask the HR manager or ask the recruiter. Like, don't be afraid to ask a question. What should I be wearing for my interview? Who's going to be interviewing me? What's the agenda for the interview? These are all things that can help you prepare and be in control of everything as you go through.
Let me get some feedback. And by the way, guys, if you have questions, remember to post them in the chat and we'll get those questions answered. I got feedback the other day as I was preparing for an investor interview, which in many ways is very similar to a job interview. If any of you guys follow me on LinkedIn, I am constantly saying being an entrepreneur is the same exact thing as being a job seeker. Everything's in your own hands. You're always you're only as much as other people help you become. It's all sales. So the advice I got was, when you go into one of these things, you want to come with the 3 to 5 things you want to communicate, and make sure when they ask questions, you portray those 3 things. So don't be a politician and avoid the question and say, well, instead I'm going to answer this. But you got to have your talking points and you got to get them across. Do you think that works similarly as a job seeker, to say, hey, these are my 3 to 5 things I want to get across, that I think this is a good idea, that I've done this in my past, and that I want to understand how they're fighting this competitor, and then make sure you communicate those?
I think there's going to be a fine line in this one. So I think within an investor interview, they're expecting you to talk a lot, right? They're going to give you quite a bit of breadth to go, let me present however I want. Where actually in an interview, there's a place where you feel like you need to articulate something, but you have to make sure it's an appropriate time, right? If you're just talking for the sake of talking, or you just suddenly spurt out something, they're going to look at you and go, what? That's not relevant to what I was asking. But the way you can handle it, and this comes back to a really fun party trick, people do forget that interviews are 2-way, right? Think about that for a second, right? When you go into an interview, the person interviewing you just goes, blah, 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 ask you loads of questions, and you respond to all of them beautifully, right? Because you are well trained that that is how interviews should run. And then you probably get about a second at the end of the interview, if they've got time, to say, what questions would you like to ask? So actually, if you can find a way of visualizing your interview to be a 2-way process, as you're going through and they're asking you questions, start asking them questions back that allow you to drop in some of the key points that you want to bring to the front of their minds about where your skills are. Does that kind of help?
It does, but I want to actually take that further. Danielle
Go
asked
for
an
it.
awesome question, and I unmuted her so she can ask you it herself. Danielle, go
Go for
ahead.
it.
Hey, everyone. So I recently had an interview with a CMO, and we got on the call. It was a phone call, not a Zoom call. And we got on the call, and she just introduced herself, said hello, and she basically, it was like almost like an awkward silence. And then she says, well, I know I'm supposed to be asking you questions, but what do you have for me? So the entire interview, she never asked me one question, which I thought to me was a red flag and really strange. Luckily, I had probably 20 questions that I asked her because I was super prepared and just kept on, even like questions that I didn't think I would ever get to, I just kept on asking.
Yeah.
I mean, we ended up having a very good dialogue, and it did open up her to explain some of her pain points for this, position and role. I mean, in the end, I unfortunately did not get the position, but I wanted to know if there was a better strategy to handle that. A few weeks prior, I also interviewed with a different CMO, and he asked a few questions and then gave me time to ask questions. But this is the first time in my career interviewing that someone at her level just had no questions for me. And I just found that to be a red flag, but maybe it's not, I don't know. So curious how to handle it.
Well done you for having so many questions prepared, because I definitely wouldn't have had 20 questions prepared at all. And I would honestly say that through all the interviews I've ever done, and even in my internal moves, I have never sat there where someone wasn't prepared to interview me. Actually, I lie. I had one, and I got up and walked out. I'm quite punchy when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like, I just sat there, and he looked at me and went, "Well, it was at Goldman Sachs. Like, it was a major company." And he was like, "So what are you doing here?" And I was actually like, "You have no idea why I'm here. You are not prepared for this interview. I'm not wasting my time. Call me back when you're ready to have a serious conversation." Because it's a waste of your time, and actually it's incredibly disrespectful. And I would say that the CMO is disrespectful. You have given up a period of your time to have a dialogue with someone who should have come prepared. They expect you to be prepared. They should give you that respect back. And I would say, honestly, if someone did that to me, and if you had got offered the job, obviously, depending on circumstances, all this great stuff, I probably would have taken that red flag and run out the front door. Like, just don't go near it. But I think, like you did, right? If that situation does arise and you're not quite as like, see you later as I was, because it was just rude, and you want to try and work through it, what you did was perfect. Like, have open-ended questions, right? Or even treat it like a coffee date, right? What would you do if you met someone new that you'd never met before at a coffee or a networking event? What type of questions would you ask? Like, how long have you been with the company? What attracted you to this organization? Why are you staying within this organization? And start to get them to tell you stuff that will hopefully quieten that red flag, or it's just going to make you go, no, that red flag is really, really genuine. So use it to your advantage. But in all fairness, she set you up to fail, because if you're interviewing her, like, it's just one-sided, right? Which is what I said right at the beginning. An interview should be two-way all the way through from beginning to end. But well done you for like surviving that.
I got.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's really quick. Thank you. And you know what? I was really bummed out that I did not get the position, but now, like, having a day or two to like think about it, it was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to me.
Absolutely is, because the odds are, if you'd been reporting into her, him, whoever it was,
yes, I would. Yeah,
the situation would have continued, and actually your development would have been stunted. And I always say that if you get a no in an interview, and I know we're going to touch on this in a bit, but if you get a no in the interview, it's hard to hear, right? It's really, really hard to hear, but you have to trust that actually it's just not the right fit right now, or that company just isn't going to merge with you. Going to the wrong company is the most career suffocating thing you can ever do, right?
Guys, yeah, we are going to talk about rejection in a moment, towards the end, in like a couple minutes, because Riveter is actually going to do something pretty cool for rejections moving forward, and I want to bring that up when we talk about it. Again, drop questions in there as you have them. One final preparation question: meeting people. We talk about networking all the time. There's nothing particularly new to say there besides go keep networking. However, I want to talk about focus in networking and networking to prepare for an interview. if you know who you're going to be interviewing with, or you at least know the department, the job title, the company, what kinds of people should I be networking with in advance of that? And what kind of questions might I be asking people who work at that company, people who have had that role in the past?
Yeah.
Who should I be looking to meet, and what should I be looking to learn?
It's a really it's really hard, because I think like when I've ever done interviews with people, I was in a generation that I would know people within their network. So go and find someone, so connect with people on LinkedIn who you know you're going to be interviewed with, right? Then go through their connections and see if there's anyone you know that knows them, right? And if you can't find anyone who knows them and is best friends with them, whatever, go and look at all their posts, right? Genius. This is like professional stalking at its best. So every post a person puts on LinkedIn is stored on their profile, and it gives you the most fabulous insight into who they are and their opinion and position on a variety of topics that are sometimes not so filtered as they should be on social media. So I would say go and do that first. I think trying to find other people within their connections and their networks and trying to connect with them and asking them loads of questions, I think sometimes you can get a bit lost and go down a bit of a rabbit hole with them. Like if you find a natural connection, then of course talk to them, find out what they thought of the company, why they left, why they joined, all the basics, but try not to get too lost down that piece, because you need to actually focus more on where you are and who the person is you're sitting in front of. And that's what I would personally say. Just focus on you, focus on what you're doing, and just do mild stalking either way.
Let me now get into the interview, right? We're in the interview. There's a lot of people here who are switching careers, switching industries. How do people, you called it pivots earlier, so we're going to stick to that term. How do people answer the question or prepare for answering the question of, you've never done this before, or sure, you've done similar things in a totally different industry before. You know, I know there's a lot of people on this call who come from retail, who come from travel, come from hospitality, industries that are, you know, on a bit of a hiatus during COVID, and they are making those pivots. How do people answer the question, well, how could you be qualified for this? It doesn't look like you've done this before.
Okay, so the best way to do it is to be confident is your first point, okay? You've got to really believe and understand the skills you've developed from your job, right? So what you'll realize is moving between industries, they call different tasks different things, right? And acronyms and jargon and all this kind of stuff doesn't mean the same between two industries. And if you're moving into a new industry, you've got to remember the person sitting opposite you doesn't necessarily fully understand what your day-to-day job was, right? They're just not going to, because they haven't lived your life, so they're not going to know. So if someone says to you, how is this relatable to my job? Talk with confidence. Be like, look, this is exactly what I had to do. Talk high level. Don't talk about you're in travel or retail or whatever, but this was the problem. This was what I did to solution it, and this was the outcome. And this is how it's applicable to your business and this role. So take them on that journey to understand what you did and then how it relates back to them, because it puts the two pieces of the puzzle back together. And it's so simple. And when I say confidence, I really mean this, guys, because I see so many people get asked this question and their shoulders dip in, they get really nervous, really anxious and ashamed. And I think ashamed is the right word. They get really ashamed that they did a job before and that you almost feel like you're being judged because you haven't done this job for like 10, 15 years. But if you pull your shoulders back and go, actually, do you know what? I owned that. Like I was really good at customer service. I was really good at whatever it may have been. And in the job you're in, you need someone like me because I've got X number of years that is fully relatable. And I can learn your business. I can learn your industry because I did it when I was in X job, right? Like I don't think it's really any more complicated than that. It's just your confidence and your ability to relate it across to what they're experiencing today. That's a very high level answer, I know, because it's so unique to each of you on this call about what that really means. But it's exactly what I did when I moved from banking to software sales.
I think it's fair. There's so many people who I speak with who have done remarkable. Oh, actually, this person's on this call. He's had a career as an engineer in oil fields, as a process manager, like totally different careers and totally different industries. And each and every time he shows up and he says, you know what I've done before? I've managed some of the most complex industrial systems in the world. I was on submarines in the military. Are you kidding me? If you could transition out of submarines in the military, you could literally accomplish anything. And that stands for people who are coming from pretty much anything. If you could put on 1,000-person event, if you could be an account manager for Walmart on your advertising platform, if you could think of a marketing campaign that was seen by 1 million people, you can literally accomplish anything. David asked, how do you share with those companies that your previous experience allows you to make the transition? Many reject you because you don't yet have that SaaS or fintech, but they do take the time to interview 2 or 3 times. I can actually dig a little bit more specifically into that. It seems like a lot of companies are just saying, "Oh my God, all these job seekers here. Let me interview everybody," and you know, I'm the champion here because everyone's going to come take interviews with me. How do people explain, look, I've never done SaaS before, but I can do this? How do they build up that credibility? Confidence is all well and good, but how do they draw those dots? You give a specific example.
I think, like, I guess I can give you a specific example because I did that, right? I moved from banking into software sales, and I moved in as a salesperson, right? Banking, selling software. Different worlds, very different worlds. But what I did is I brought in examples where I'd made us money, right? If you're moving into a sales role, the person sitting opposite you is just going cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. So if you can pull in references where you've made money or saved money, they won't care where you've come from. I actually find it disturbing by the fact that they would interview you kind of 2 or 3 times and then go, oh no, like, they knew your situation from the get-go, right? It was never a secret. Your CV would have said it, they would have known it. So actually, I'm intrigued by that, David, whether it was kind of, did they reject you because you didn't have the experience they wanted, or was there a concern? And sometimes actually, if you ask the next question, okay, you don't want me for this job, but I would be so good in your company. Is there another job that would be more appropriate for me based on my experience level? And that's a really interesting question to ask when you're transitioning into a new industry, because again, like for like doesn't necessarily look the same between industries, but by asking that, would I be a better fit in X job, like a customer service type of role rather than a sales role, or a business development rather than sales, gets the person sitting opposite you going, oh, actually, yeah, you'd be really hot in this role, and this role's coming up. Because they might not naturally think like that. Like, some people just don't. But I would say definitely do that.
Awesome. So I want to talk about rejection, because we got about 1 minute left before we're going to go into the mock interviews. The first thing I want to say about rejection is rejection freaking sucks. It sucks. I don't want to hear anyone say, oh, let it wash over you. I don't want to hear anyone say, oh, go meditate for an hour and you'll be fine. Rejection freaking sucks, and that's okay. I was very excited about an investor meeting yesterday. We got rejected. I made 2 cappuccinos this morning, and I don't even like coffee. Rejection sucks. So 2 things. The first thing is to make rejection suck a little bit less. We're doing something pretty cool at Riveter for all of you guys. This isn't something we're marketing. It's not something we're promoting. I want you to send me your next 5 rejection emails. Just forward them to adriel@riveterworks.com. Forward me your next 5 rejection emails. Get me 5 rejection emails. I'm buying you lunch that day. Simple as that. We're going to make rejection suck a little bit less. Tell me when you get rejected.
I want to start applying for jobs.
Tell me when you get rejected. No, don't scam me. Don't start applying for jobs you're not qualified for. Send me your next 5 rejection emails. We're going to make this suck a little bit less, because that's the point of Riveter. And it does frustrate me to get rejected, and it's okay to frustrate you. Gabi, give us some advice. I know you do 5 in a day, or just the next 5? Just the next 5, Lauren. It doesn't have to be 5 in a day. Don't go above and beyond to give yourself an absolutely terrible day. The email address, there you go. I'll type it in, is adriel@riveterworks.com. Forward me the next 5 rejection emails you get, guys. We're going to make it suck a little bit less. Lunch is on me that day. Gabi, my question for you. You have 1 million. Yeah, don't send me your last 1 million, please. Let's do this moving forward. Very fair point. Thank you, Lauren. Gabi, you coach a lot of people. You are the most, I think in England, they would call you chipper. Here we just call you awesome, right? Is that
chipper?
Like,
I've never heard someone say chipper ever.
No, okay, maybe
apart
not.
from Americans who think we're British and say chipper and spot of tea to each other all the time.
Well, that's all I know about it. Gabi, you're an optimist. It's the reason I love you. It's the reason I'm happy to have you here. And it's the reason I think you are a popular career coach. What do you do with rejection? How do you handle it? What do you do next? What is your approach personally? Because as an entrepreneur, you get that 8 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you tell your clients to do with rejection?
Suck it up. Like, okay, this is where you're going to learn to love me or hate me moment. This is a Marmite moment with Gabi, right? Sit down, get a cup of tea, very British. And it's suck it up, right? Rejection sucks. It is the worst feeling in the world. And you're so right. Although I'm a coach, I still do business development for our recruitment business. Like, I'm constantly putting myself out there. And every time you put yourself out there, you have the chance that someone's going to go, no. And it's just that face where they just go, no. I don't want to talk to you. No, not my friend. No, like, whatever. And you get to the point where you start by taking it really personally. You're like, nobody wants to be my friend. Like, no one's going to love me. And then you go, do you know what? Sod off. Like, literally, that's what I do now. If someone goes, I don't want to be your friend, I'm like, okay, cool. Well, we weren't meant to be mates, because you can't be friends with everyone in the world, right? You're probably all sitting here right now where you've had a row with someone that you kind of like, do you know what? We're never going to see eye to eye. We're never going to be friends. This is never going to work. Finding a job is no different, right? Put it into this context. I see hiring someone in your company as a bit like a marriage, right? You probably spend more time talking to them than you do your own partner or spouse or whoever you're with, right? That's just reality. So when you get into that relationship, you want to know you're getting into bed with the right person, right? And when you get a rejection, as long as during that interview, as long as you've asked all your questions and they've asked all their questions, you should walk away going, do you know what? Sometimes it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it's better to know now that it doesn't work than once you've got into bed at them and you look at them and go, oh God, that's what you look like without makeup on, right? That is how you should see rejection. And it's a real harsh reality. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to say it gets easier. It probably doesn't, but it's all about perspective. Rather know now than know later. And just keep going. You will find a company. Just keep narrowing down your search. Understand why you got rejected, right? Nobody likes being told why they've been rejected, but ask it. Don't let a recruiter, if you're working with one, ever go, we didn't get feedback. Yeah, you did. Because if you're like, unless you're a really rubbish recruiter, you absolutely got feedback. Now have the balls, excuse me, it's past lockdown my time, and tell me what it is, because unless they tell you, you can't develop, you can't grow, you can't evolve to be able to take on that next interview. So you're only damaging yourself by just taking it personally. Go, no, but you know what? I'm going to learn, I'm going to get better, and I'm going to keep twisting and moving until I find the right company and the right job that sings to you both. And then it becomes like this match made in heaven. Very cheesy, I know, but it's reality. And then those are the jobs that you will be so excited about getting that job offer letter and running into the office or running to your laptop with COVID, but you'll be excited for it. So sorry, no soft love from me. It's all hard.
That's totally fair. All right. Well, there's a whole conversation happening about Marmite in the chat, and I'm not gonna chime in on that one.
Yeah, come on, guys.
All right, folks. So here's what we're gonna do. Gabi, first of all, you deserve a huge muted round of applause. Thank you so much for joining today. Your job is not yet over, because you're gonna make some very lucky groups mock interview series. Very happy here with your feedback and questions. Here's what's going to happen, folks. Gabi, please post your website as well as the Riveter discount code and what it gets them off on your career coaching services, interview prep, resume stuff in the chat. Folks, we're going to break up into breakout rooms now. There's going to be 7 breakout rooms with about 4 people each. One of them might have 3. You are going to have your 2 questions that you're going to ask one other person, and then you're going to give each other some feedback. Now, people are coming from all over the place. A UX designer is going to interview a mechanical engineer, and it's not going to make any sense. So work with each other. So we're going to break up into those rooms. I want each one of you very quickly, 15 seconds. My name is, I'm applying for these kinds of role. Next person, my name is, I'm applying for these kinds of roles. So everyone gets a quick background from each other. Then we're going to go in alphabetical order and interview the next person. If Alex, Bill, Charlie, and Daniel are in a room together, Alex is going to ask Bill 2 questions. They're all going to give some feedback. Bill is going to ask Charlie 2 questions. I'll give some feedback. Charlie will ask Daniel. Then Daniel will ask Alex, right? This whole thing is going to take 15 minutes. And then we're going to come out, break up into new breakout rooms, and go again. This is not being recorded. You are not being tested. No one here is hiring everybody. Feel free to experiment, but remember, stay concise, add value, pretend in your mind that you're interviewing for a specific company. If you got one coming up and someone asks you, hey, why are you going to be an asset to my company? You say, well, sales manager at advertising agency, I will be an asset because this is what I've done before and whatever. So be as specific as you can and give each other some feedback. All right. So let's have some fun here. The rooms are open. Join the rooms. I'll pull everybody out in 15 minutes and then we'll do this again. See y'all soon.